just started the recording here, and then, yep, I was just gonna take a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
So right here, would the best case scenario go left or go right?
Well, probably go right since you'd already won the fight. So going up the right side would mean that you just get into them faster if they're all on the right side. But it'd be situational. The right side's not just going to always be the best.
The last time we talked, at least that VOD review you made, you said to start using more natural cover. So
Yep.
lately, I've been, showing half my shield to give, my teammates line of sight against them. At
Yep.
least that's what I've been conscious about lately.
All right. Yeah, so far I have a couple things I'm thinking through. First off, there we were really far pushed forwards when we were down a couple people. We had like someone on cart, someone who was dead, and we were just really far forwards. I think we're also going to talk about shield management after this game is done. Make sure we're playing more aggressive when we see that we've won a fight, especially like when we're up 3 picks, right? We want to be going in aggro and doing things. Okay, with Shatter, a lot of the times we're gonna try to go for just like to get max value out of it. A lot of times we try to go for like more than one person, right? Usually, 2 people is kind of a minimum you're trying to look for, unless it's like a super important target, such as like a Genji who's nanoblading, right? Here, probably want to be pushed forwards a little bit, up in the corner, right? Making sure we're taking space. I think we're gonna have to talk about a lot about aggression here on Reinhardt. Another thing we'll talk about after this game's done.
Someone's pushing cart. Damn it.
All right. Yep. One single. Usually, you're gonna want to put your team towards 5 people rather than one single Bob, as you're going to get more value out of blocking all that damage. There, we're a little bit far from cover out in the open, and then we're definitely gonna have to talk about kind of your playstyle on Reinhardt as well as your aggression. Now, last time we did the coaching, did we go over Reinhardt in specific, or did we go over a different character?
No, I don't know if you remember, but it was like me and like 5 friends,
Yeah.
Rupert, Dominic. You did go over them a little bit, but I guess when you're coaching 6, 7 people, you
Yeah.
can't really go in depth.
All right. Oh. Make sure we're watching out for the charge, and we can counter charge that, or we can, just dodge it right by walking out of it. That was just an awareness death. Make sure we're trying to look to cut out our deaths, because obviously, deaths aren't going to be very good for us. So far we've died a couple times when maybe we could have stopped. So survivability is looking like maybe something to work on. Fire strikes have been looking pretty solid. No real problem with those.
Damn it. I thought he charged.
Yeah, he charged into the wall, looks like. Alright, so why don't we, you can just don't get into a queue yet. I'm going to stream on my end here. Alright, so we're going to go over some stuff here in the practice range. But basically, big thing on Reinhardt is your playstyle, your aggression was one of the bigger ones. So on Reinhardt, you have basically, you're a brawl character, right? You want to brawl on top of things. You want to be going in and doing things, and that means that you're not going to want to just sit there holding shield a lot of the time. If you're just basically playing around sitting there holding shield, you're going to be much better off on a character like Sigma or Orisa, who can shield and shoot and shield and use abilities, right? But Reinhardt can neither shield and swing or shield and fire strike, right? He can only do one thing or the other, and therefore you're not gonna want to sit there and just shield the entire time, right? That's not what Reinhardt's kit is for. So alternatively, how Reinhardt likes to be played is he likes to be played as a brawl character. So he wants to be up here within this range so that he can swing, where he can get fire strike in, do brawly tank stuff. That's how Reinhardt looks to create space and value, not just by sitting and shielding. So when are times where we should be shooting? When are not times where we should be shielding? Well, you have kind of 6 different times where you shield. You shield when you personally are low. You shield when you have teammates who are low. You shield when you are taking space. You shield when you are backing out of space, and you can shield up against abilities and ultimates. But if we're just sitting there soaking up random spam damage, like we're just chilling, we're not low, our team's not low, they're not ulting, we're not blocking abilities, but we're just sitting here shielding nothing, then our shield's just gonna be going down, and then by the time we try to go actually do something, we're not going to have any shield left. So our shield's going to be broken, or our shield's going to be very low. And if we try to go aggressive at that point, well, now they're just going to shred us, and we have no way to protect ourselves, right? We have no way to back up. But instead, if we went and pushed in and got aggressive originally at the very start, and then we started doing stuff, and then once we're low, we back up and shield. Now we actually have our shield to escape, right? Rather than using our shield to begin the fight with, right? Okay, so that's kind of the big playstyle thing. I want to see you being a little bit more aggressive, going in a little bit more often, making sure you're not just sitting there using shield when it's unneeded, right? But then the other thing I'd like to talk about is you can look to save your shield as well, because a lot of times it was just breaking very fast. So shield hopping is a tech. Are you familiar with the term shield hopping, or how to shield hop?
Yeah, you were teaching me last time as
Last time,
well.
all right. So yeah. Then I'd definitely recommend to continue to practice it, because I wasn't seeing it very much in the gameplay I just saw. Especially in particular when we're looking to take space or leave space. So if I already talked in depth about that, we don't have to talk about it, right? But just remember, when we're looking to take space, then and go somewhere fast, or just shield hopping so we can get through this open area. Oh snap! He just joined my lobby. So we can take space and leave space very fast if we're trying to go in, right?
Yep, makes sense.
Alright, so that is pretty much it for the things we talked about, and then just staying alive is another thing we wanted to work on.
Should I run one back
Yeah,
and
yep.
see if?
You can go ahead and go into another game. Okay, I'm gonna stop the stream there. I'm spectating you.
I'm gonna see if I could implement what you said.
Alright.
So I guess a big question I have, at least, the skeptic in me says
Yep.
like yes, I understand. Ryan is a brawl character, and you want to get in people's face and start being aggressive. Um, but what I encounter a lot is two things. One, if it's important to keep
Mm.
your teammates up, right? And having your shield up, and reducing the risk of my teammates getting popped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and sometimes when the enemy team is spamming, it'll pop one of your teammates, and it kind of they'll start blaming you in a sense for not having your shield up, and when they're kind of spamming. Is
Oh.
that their fault, or?
Okay, so it really depends on the composition. So you might want to be holding up your shield a little bit more, for example, if they had snipers. right? If they had snipers who can one-shot your teammates or other characters that can one-shot you, then in that case, you definitely need to be looking to hold up your shield much, much more often, right? Because then you don't want them to get popped, like you said. But in any other composition, they might not need shield because they're not going to get blown up that fast. And if they are getting blown up, then in that situation, you kind of need to identify that situation better, because that might mean that there's a ton of spam damage. When there's an absolute ton of spam, you can block that, right? If you know that your teammates are going to die. So it's really about analyzing the situation. And there's a lot of situations in that last game where I would say we were shielding when it wasn't really necessary, right? So it's not that we never shield anything, but it's that we kind of need to know when to shield and when not to shield. And there are a lot of instances where we didn't need the shield. Does that make sense?
That was more of an awareness problem, right? That death.
So yeah, that death we got no, we didn't get hacked. We were like just really far forwards. Usually you're gonna want to position more so on point, right, and let them walk into you guys, right? That doesn't mean that we sit there and shield the entire time and just hold it up and let them spam it, but it means that we just want to be holding somewhat near there so that we can not be out in the open.
You good revive.
All right, not much you get done there about the EMP. Though the fight
And
before when we had, oh,
mhm.
go ahead.
And the second argument I was going to make about spam popping other people, the second argument I was going to make is that when you are trying to get too close forward, you get popped too much. Um,
Well, that's about understanding like how far forwards is too far forwards, right? There are a lot of instances where we would just kind of like sit around and not do anything. I'm not saying to now run into the enemy team, and that, like, I want to clarify here, like, there's a spectrum, right? I don't right now, if we're playing too passive and let's say we're like 30% passive, I don't want you to all of a sudden tone it up and go to 90% aggressive, right? That's not what I'm trying to get you to do. I'm trying to get you to tone it up and go to a 50% aggressive, right? Because if you're going to 100% or 90% or 80%, then now you're running into their spawn and you're dying constantly, right? And in this instance, we probably shouldn't be getting too aggro because we have most of our team in spawn and we are down half of our team, right? So in that instance, now we want to be playing more passive, right, and not going in. So it's knowing about when do I get aggressive, when do I play passive, when can I like ramp it up past 50, when can I lower it past down from 50, and then you're probably going to want to keep it on average at 50, whereas on average right now we're at like 30, right? Okay. There we held up, we weren't holding up shield for long while after like we were purpled, and we just want to be very careful of our health. Pay very close attention to your health bar so that when we're purpled, when we're low, that we're shielding and backing up. Now the hack you have no control over because I'm pretty sure you got EMP'd again, right? But you do have control over making sure you're not getting down to 1 HP off of a purple by just making sure that you're shielding, right? Yeah, unfortunate that we couldn't touch there. So does that make sense? I think maybe it was a miscommunication about my first main point. Is it seems like you're getting the sense that I want you to now be running into the enemy team at full throttle all the time, whereas I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to say that it's very situational on when you play aggressive and when you play passive, and we want to identify those situations, as well as you have a kind of a default factory setting that you should be on, right? You have a default aggression level that should be probably around like 50%, where you're neither playing super aggro or super passive, where you're just in the middle. And then right now we're playing on average too passive, where there are moments where we should be more aggressive and we're not being aggressive.
Pro Reinhardt's, where do they usually set up? Do they set up like here, or do they set up by the door over there?
Oh, they probably push through like left room, right? Like because again we're on a brawl comp, so you probably want to push into them. But if they're on the right side now, we probably want to push into somewhere, right? Instead of just sitting still. See, just make sure we're paying attention to the hacks, right? And we're being very, very careful of those so that we're not getting hacked and dying, right? So we have to be aware of the Sombra. Make sure you're not walking out of line of sight of your team there because, you know, your whole team was on point and you walked around the corner. So make sure we're keeping in line of sight of our team so they can help us out and support us. As well as maybe making sure that, like, if our entire team is not like, if it looks like nobody's following us, we might not want to be getting too aggro, right? Because then that's getting too aggressive, right? So pay attention to our teammates, right? Because they're going to dictate whether or not you can get aggressive or not. If you have 4 teammates with you, then go ahead and get aggressive. If you have none with you, you probably aren't going to be able to, right? Okay, no shield, so we're backing up. Yeah, I liked the aggression there, though we again reacted very, very slow with the shield after we were already low. So paying attention to our health bar is going to be a very important thing to learn how to do. And then the other thing there was that when we backed out away from our team rather than towards our team, right? Which meant that we no longer get any healing and any support. So we want to make sure we're sticking with our team. It's not just their job to stick with us; it's our job to make sure we're sticking with them and staying in line of sight of them, right? So that we can actually, you know, get team support. Alright, when you're looking to, you know, actually get an aggro and swing on stuff, they have a ton of damage that they can pump into you, right? So we want to make sure that we're not just immediately going swing, 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 right? But instead what we can do is we can play around the corner, right? You don't want to just run into them. You want to play in the corner, swing on the corner, defend the corner, right? Give your time to poke and do stuff, right? Your team composition is not a full brawl team comp, right? We're running a spam composition, which I think we talked about with like your team, right? We talked about how to analyze team comps. We're on a spam comp for the most part, so we can't play super, super insanely aggro, and we gotta need to identify that, and therefore our aggression changes from maybe last round, right? Yeah, that's unfortunate. Kind of got stuck into a corner. So yeah, rather than just going in and swinging, 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 we might want to just hold the corner, swing on the corner, use it as cover, making sure that we're not just, instead of swinging like 4 times in a row without shielding, we can maybe like swing, shield, or swing, swing, shield, right? Just like, instead of just keep going in, we might want to play slightly more passive just because of the team comps that we're working with. Pay attention to kill feed. I think we're gonna have to talk about kill feed, though I think we talked about that like in the big 7-man sessions that we did, right? But we just, as a reminder, right, we'll talk about that or do a refresher on that after this game's done, or round is at least. Very nice. Oh, almost died again because we weren't watching your health bar. So just again watch your health, right? Because it's just like we were at like 300 in purple, and then that's the point, right? We're shielding when we're at like 200, 300 health, like half HP, not when we're down at like 100, because then you're just gonna end up getting killed through your shield, or they're gonna get out killed you around the shield. So do you remember what we talked about in terms of how to know whether or not you've won or lost a fight?
Yeah, one or two that whoever team lost one or two is at a disadvantage. 2 to 3, you lost the fight, and at that point you don't ult anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it also goes the exact opposite way as well, right? 1 to 2 is also an advantage. 2 to 3 is also a 1 fight, right? So in that last round that we were in, we had ulted when it was like a 6v2, right? When we had like a very significant advantage, or maybe it wasn't 6. I think it was like a 5v2, right? When our teammates gotten a ton of them. All right. be careful about our aggression. Again, paying attention to our team compositions. I think we're going to have to remind our team compositions again after this game as well. But they're on a brawlier team comp than our comp is, right? The Reinhardt can get away with more than we can, and we just kind of ran into their comp. The other thing was that I think our team was lagging behind us, as we also didn't have a Lucio and they did, and we kind of ran ahead of our whole team. So we were kind of, again, going in without our team. So it looks like one of the biggest things for you is going to be like syncing up with your team, and knowing, and aggression is also looking like one of the biggest things of knowing when can I get aggressive, when can I not play aggressive.
I found you.
Unfortunate. Make sure when we're low that we're requesting healing. That way just both your supports know where you're at. Good shield hopping. Grab the health pack before you're going back in, right? Just you get healed up 2 times as fast. No, remember, add a fire strike in there, as it does more damage than just your swing does, right? It just means we're bursting him down faster. Maybe we don't end up dying there if we're just using our fire strike. It is 100 damage versus your 75 damage from your swing. Or actually, sorry, they upped that, didn't they? So it's like 80 damage from your swing? Question mark?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
So 100 versus 80. Very nice pin.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Reinhardt.
Okay. 3 things, like 3 swings, and Echo has it. So just be very, very aware of that.
Focus my target.
Make sure that we're not just make sure that we're holding up our shield when we know, and being ready for the shatter, like as soon, like on the Echo when she's hit us a couple times.
Gotcha. I didn't know that 3 swings got
Yeah, I don't know if it's exactly 3 swings, but it's very, very fast. It's so just be prepared for it, as like if she's hit a couple things, she pretty much has it.
Where do most pros set up when they have point on this map?
Depends on team composition. It could be forwards, it could be backwards. I think we'll have to talk about team comps again if maybe I didn't talk about that and I just thought I did.
Your time's run out.
Alright, so survivability is definitely going to be something we got to work on as well. We'll do a quick strengths and weaknesses after this game's done, like talk about what's everything that we're looking like we need work on. Right, good decision back out there, I like it.
Join me. Hello.
Where does it hurt? Get into position. Thanks.
The heal.
Who ult?
Surrender to my will.
Damn it. I fucked that up.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Roadhog. Check it out.
Alright. So this is pretty much end the game, yeah, about to be. So do you mind real quick telling me how many deaths do we currently have?
14.
14? Alright. So, why don't we talk about survivability real quick, and then we'll talk about strengths and weaknesses. So, survivability. Very, very important that you just stay alive, right? Whoop-de-doo, we maybe I talked about this before, maybe I didn't. Did I talk about this with you like last time when we did like the 15 minutes?
Not much.
Not
I didn't.
much. All right. Yeah, so I'll go into depth here, right? Death's real, real bad, right? Of course, you know that, but I really want to emphasize the point because they're probably worse than you think they are. Each death is 10 seconds where you are walking back, or where you're respawning, and then 10 seconds where you're walking back from spawn. So each death is roughly 20 seconds of gameplay. Now, if we just took the last game, which is 14 deaths, and then you multiply that by 20, and then you divide that by 60 for how many minutes it was, we just spent an entire 4 minutes and 40 seconds of that last game not participating at all, while also putting our team at a disadvantage because we've already discussed and talked about the fact that when you're down a player, you're at a disadvantage and more likely to lose. So when we are dead, we are both not impacting anything while also putting our team at a disadvantage, which means that during that entire time, we're doing nothing. It's such a large quantity of time. In 4 minutes and 40 seconds, that's the amount of time that that we probably could get 3 or 4 shatters in, right? We could probably, kill tons of stuff, do a ton of tanking, take a ton of space. But because we're dead, we're losing all those fights and not participating. So let's say we cut out 3 of those deaths, right? We go down from 14 to 11. Now we've cut out we've added in an entire minute of gameplay where we're participating, right? Where we go from 4 minutes and 40 seconds down to 3 minutes and 40 seconds, right? So just that process of eliminating deaths is going to be really, really important, and we just want to make sure we're focusing on staying alive. Now, there's a bunch of different things that go into dying, right? You could have, or 4 different reasons why, and sometimes it's multiple reasons, right? But it could be a misuse of abilities, right? It could be aggression is a big one, right? It could be positioning, and it could be awareness, right? Those are really the main 4 that feed into dying, right? And so far, it's looking like probably a mixture of all of them. I'd probably say honestly, positioning is one of the better ones. So, like, why don't we go over strengths and weaknesses real quick now that we talked about that? But the big thing is just look at your deaths, analyze why am I dying, right? That's the kind of step process of improvement is going, 1, what was my mistake? What did I do wrong? Why did I die? 2, right? What could I have done instead, right? What could I have done better? But what could I have done better was the solution to the mistake. So that means that if we were, for example, if we know that we died because we were out of position, where could we have positioned instead? You can ask yourself that. Try to tell yourself, okay, instead of being here, I probably should have been there, right? If we were unaware, making sure we're being aware. So in the third step would be just the application process and then making sure in the future we're trying to apply that, right? So deaths, big deal. Want to make sure we're looking to cut out our deaths. So going over all these different points, right? Strengths and weaknesses. I would probably say that let's go through them real quick, right? Ability usage. Honestly, not too bad with the fire strikes. I don't see any problem with those. Charges, maybe a little bit of work needed, though it's not terrible. And then shield usage, I probably say is the one that needs the most work. So in general, ability usage out of everything, I'd probably put on the like low to medium end, right? So here we're gonna do priority. I don't know, I might have said this last time, right? But we're doing a priority, right? Low to high of how much you need to work on these things. So probably would say so far we're looking at ability usage, looking at like a low to medium priority. Ultimate usage. Let's talk about ults real quick. We missed probably like almost every ult, and maybe 1 or 2 that we landed on 1 person, right? So we want to make sure we're getting better shatters in, and we'll talk about that in a second of like I guess some ways that we can do that. So I'm just gonna stream here so we can get that visual going. But shatter usage is definitely another thing that we just need to work on. I probably say is honestly, even though I haven't talked about it at all, so probably slightly more important than ability usage here, as we've just haven't been landing shatters, and then the other thing is that we have been getting shatter regularly. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but that one I'd probably put at like a let's see, I'd probably put that at like a medium, maybe like a medium, yeah, maybe medium high. It's like medium high. Moving on, Reinhardt doesn't have mechanics, so that's not a category. But we're actually going to add in a category here. Anyways, so then we come to awareness and aggression. So those two are kind of combined because aggression feeds off of awareness. You can't know to play aggressive or passive if you don't know what's going on around you. So that one is a pretty big one. Honestly, probably looking like a high category to work on, right? Big thing to work on, as right now we just don't know when we're supposed to be going aggro, and we don't know when, we're not being super aware of our surroundings. So paying attention to big ones, or paying attention to where's my team at, where's the enemy team at, and what's happening in the kill feed, right? As a lot of the times we're maybe getting too aggro when we don't have teammates with us, or we maybe are not paying attention to whether or not we've won or lost the fight and not getting aggressive or passive accordingly, right? So we just want to make sure we're paying attention to those things as we go, since we've already talked about this now. As we continue to the next games, I'll start to point it out and say, okay, this is where we should be looking to get aggro. We've gotten some picks, we have an advantage, right? I'll start calling that out so you can kind of figure that out as you play. But so far it's looking like a pretty high priority. The other thing I'm going to add in is the other category I'm adding in is the survivability category. Now, let's see, I actually don't. I think it's a big combination of a ton of things. I'd probably say the biggest thing that's feeding into survivability is going to be your awareness/aggression. At the moment, that's looking like the biggest thing that's feeding into us dying constantly is our awareness/aggression. Though, I'm just gonna. I think there's a lot of other things like ability, like shield usage particularly, and positioning, and being other things that are impacting it. So we'll keep it as a separate category rather than combining it. But survivability, big thing. Probably a high priority again, just same as the other one. Really want to work on that, because when we're dying constantly, means that we're not really accomplishing very much, right? We're not never able to do anything, right? And then finally, positioning. Honestly, we haven't talked too much about positioning so far in the game. I do think that it is a factor, though I do not think that so far it is nearly showing itself to be as important as some of these other categories. As probably say that the biggest thing that we're struggling with positioning so far is just the fact that we're going in when we don't have teammates, right? So we're just kind of positioning too far away from our team. So make sure we're positioning with our team, right? It's not, like I said before, it's not just their job to be with us. It's our job to make sure we're paying attention to where they are and being with them as well, right? And not going in without them. Now so where would I put the positioning so far? Maybe put positioning at like a probably low to medium. It's kind of same as ability usage. It's not, it's not terrible, and it could change the rest of the session, but that's where it's at now. Right. Now let's continue on. I think. I'm trying to think of what we do here. So why don't we just talk about more aggression stuff real quick, right? So there's a ton of stuff that goes into aggression, so let's talk about a couple of them, right? In general, like I said before, we're looking to tone it up a tiny little bit, but we don't want to make sure it's going too overboard. There's also times to play aggressive and there's times to play passive. First off, when you have your team with you, this is when you can play aggressive. When you do not have your team with you, this is where you cannot play aggressive. This is where you need to play passive, because sometimes we're going in when we don't have our teammates with us, right? That's essentially like I said, that's essentially us going in when it's a 1v6 or 2v6, right? We can't win those fights, so therefore don't try to walk in when you don't have teammates, right? On from there, kill feed, right? Another big one. Pay attention to whether or not you're up or down people, right? When you're 1 to 2, you can play more aggressive or passive accordingly, right? 2 to 3, won or lost fight, play insanely aggro or passive. On top of that, that's not the only thing that goes into whether or not you're winning or losing a fight, right? There's a ton of other things. That's why 2 is the middleman, right? 2 is in the middle, goes 1 to 2, and then 2, and then 3. 2 is the middle because there's a ton of things that go into whether or not you're winning or losing, right? Which team has more health? Which team has better positioning? Which team has closer spawns? Which team has more ults? Which team is using more ults? Which team has more abilities, right? Which team, those are really a lot of the big ones, right? And that's going to dictate whether or not you can play, you're winning or losing a fight, and whether or not you can play aggro or passive, because you could be down 2 people, right? You could be at a 2-person disadvantage, yet the entire enemy team could be 1 HP, and you still have a chance of winning the fight, right? Because you can kill them through that, right? And you can maybe turn it around, or you could be down 2 people and have a close spawn, right? You could have a spawn point that's like right next to you, like on like on any 2CP map, right? And still be able to win that fight because you have such a big advantage off of that, right? So paying attention to those things is going to allow you to dictate your aggression as well, right? So why don't you go ahead and hop into your next game? I'll try to what I'm going to do now that we've talked a lot about this is I'm actually going to in-game tell you, right, like give you reminders like, okay, just pay attention to this. You're up, go. Okay, you're down, don't go, right? Pay attention to these, right? And then hopefully that'll be able to help you out a lot with your aggression and give you, kind of get you to start paying attention to the things you need to pay attention to.
Got it.
Now arriving at Lijiang Tower.
So do most pros on this map set up to the right, or do they go up and then go downward, or?
Wait, I can't. It's actually not letting me go to your character. That's a bug that happens sometimes. Yeah, they usually go to the middle, right, and then like up to into the inside room that you call that like
Mhm.
white room.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rejoin here and see if I can get to you. So yeah, usually, especially again, it depends on team comps. I forgot to talk about team comps. We didn't talk about team comps. That was one thing I was gonna say, but it depends on team comps and like what you're running. But yeah, usually if you're like a Reinhardt, you're gonna come up in here. Yeah. Okay, we're low, we're shielding, yep. Kind of 1 HP still, so we just need to, get healed, request healing, so we get healing faster. Alright, actually I think, but what happened to our seconds? Oh, we're in Quick Play Classic, I forgot. Lovely, so we have 1 Mercy. So, keeping in mind team compositions again, we have 1 single healer, and that healer is Mercy, therefore we're probably going to have 0 healing the entire game. So we have to be very, very passive accordingly, and look to be very, very careful with our health. And we're low HP, so here we probably want to just duck behind cover so we can get our shield back, right? Instead of just constantly holding it up. Alright, now we're up 2 picks. We probably want to look to get aggro, right? Even if we don't necessarily have a shield right now. And we're shielding a lot when we don't necessarily need to at the moment. Make sure we're not just spamming it up if it's not needed, so we don't want people shooting at us, like all the situations like we talked about before. Right? If it's not necessary, then make sure we're not shielding and keeping it perpetually at 300. Watch the health, right? We're down a little bit right now, so we just want to recharge the shield, let them walk into us here in point. Nice, we're up 2 people right now, so as long as we have our health, we can still look to play aggro. Alright, so now we're 400, so we can play semi-aggro, but we are down a person, right? Up, now we're even, now we're a ton up, right? Just constantly paying attention to kill feed. Yep, usually people, as long as you have your team, usually you're going to hold this choke right here. Right?
Ooh.
Alright, stop. We're also going to talk about shatters too. Those are 2 of the things that we're going to talk about that I forgot. Shatters, right? Make sure we're paying attention to them. When was the last time Reinhardt used shatter before that?
First one?
Yep. You said first fight?
No, wasn't that his first shatter?
Yeah, exactly, right? And how many fights had it been? Like 2 or 3, right? At that point, so if he's not ulted in 2 or 3 fights, oh, very nice shatter. If he hasn't ulted in 2 or 3 fights, you can probably say, okay, he's gonna have shatter here, right? And when we know that he has shatter, that's the first step to blocking shatter, right? You can't block shatter if you don't know what's coming. So make sure you're paying attention. pay attention to when was the last time he used it. So here we know Reinhardt used his ult before ours, and he won a fight before we did. So he's probably going to be roughly around the same as we did, as I am, right? So we can think he's somewhere around 60 right now, right? Because we can compare how much their Reinhardt did to how much we did. They want to fight, and then we want to fight, right? And then that's how you
Gotcha.
can look to track it, right? If you were dead and he was just in there farming people, then he's going to be ahead of you. If he ulted first and then you ulted second, he's probably going to have his ult ahead of you, right? But if you're doing a ton of stuff, then you could probably be ahead of him, right? So we just want to make sure we're paying attention to it so we can block it more effectively. Right. Actually, would you want to leave this game real quick so we can talk about those things that we never talked about, and then wrap it up and like get into the wrap up after that? So, we were going to talk about we were going to talk about team compositions as well as how to land chatters more effectively. So, team compositions first. Did we talk about that when we did like the 7-man team thing? Do you remember or no? Oh, hello. Looks like you stopped playing Overwatch. Did you DC? Oh, hello.
Here.
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry, brother.
Okay. Yeah, I was confused there for a second when you weren't responding, and then I saw that you'd left. All right. So, question is, did we went over like the 7-man team thing? Did we go over team compositions?
Yes, we did, and we
Mm,
tried to implement it, and we had a bunch of flaws. And I guess either we misunderstood you, or
mm,
but I guess so. You went, spam comp, brawl comp, and hybrid
mm.
comps, right? I believe that was the third
Di-
option.
dive, spam,
Yeah, there we go.
brawl, and then hybrid is anything that's like a kind of a mix of them.
Right. And so, if I understood what you were saying, is
Yep.
that let's say a brawl comp, right?
Yep.
Do you want, if you're going to commit to a comp, um, what's the ideal situation? A hybrid comp, or committing to one of those three comps?
Usually committing to one of those three comps.
Okay.
Hybrid comp usually is going to be less efficient, though there have been times where hybrid comps have been a thing and hybrid comps are run, but it's not nearly as often that they are run competitively. And most of the time that's just gonna be something that you find in a ranked environment.
So me not watching rank or anything, or at least us, we don't watch as much rank when we're thinking of a brawl comp, and this is one
Mm,
of the comps that we actually ran, and it was a disaster. Maybe because we don't have a lot of play time with people,
uh,
but we went Ryan, Zarya,
mm,
Reaper, Junkrat, Moira, and I think Brig was the last one. And
yep.
I mean, that was a broad comp, and like I was telling everyone, like, let's commit to this. Like, don't switch off to Ash. Don't do any of that. Let's
Mm,
commit to this, and let them react to the comp rather than us reacting to them. And it was just
mm.
a disaster. I
All
guess
right. So, well, that could be a couple different things, right? There's the multiple different things that could be. First off, it could be a terrible brawl map, right? Because each map is going to have different. It's going to be basically like think of like for example, think of Junkertown, right? Junkertown is a pretty terrible brawl map, especially on first point because of how wide out and open it is. Could you maybe guess what would be a really good comp on Junkertown? Because if it's a
it would
very
be
wide open map with a lot of high grounds,
assuming attack spam comp.
both on attack and defense, spam comp, right? Because if
Uh,
it's a very wide out open map, that means far distance characters are going to find the most value. So it could depend on. Do you remember what map you're playing the brawl on?
Man, honestly, I think it was Junkertown.
Junkertown. Okay, well then there you go. That could be one massive explanation for it, as maps do like some maps are better for different compositions, And it's not necessarily that the fact that every comp is going to work on every map, right? That's why you have different compositions. If one comp worked in every scenario, then you'd never have a need for the other comps. Though sometimes meta that's how it works. Like in Goat's meta, don't know if you remember that or were around for that. That was like a big insane brawl comp that was around for like a year. That worked on any map in any scenario, right? So that's you know most of the time nowadays there's nothing really like that, so it's going to be very map dependent on what you're running. That's one of the big ones. Don't play, you want to play brawl on close quarters maps. So for example, the map you just played on, Lijiang Tower, that indoor map that you were just on, I believe that's called Control Center, right? That one is a very, very popular brawl map because it's very condensed, it's indoors, it's very
Yeah.
close together. And if you're trying to run a spam comp in there, it's not going to work too well. If you try to run a dive comp in there, not going to work too well because of how close in close quarters it is, and therefore brawl's going to do well there, right? So that's the big.
Question:
Go ahead. Hmm?
Is there a cheat sheet that kind of like here's the map and here's the comp that works best for it, or
I don't have one, and maybe someone did develop that. You can maybe like look that up if you wanted, but I don't necessarily have one off the top of like because I haven't like I did go over that I think at some point with somebody else, but I don't have like a chart for that if you're asking for one. So I mean, if you wanted to take some time to go over that, like I could just real quick. But for the most part, it's just understanding that wide open maps aren't going to be the best for it, right? But did you want to take time to go over that in
no? I
particular?
think I could find it. It's just
Mm,
if you have one readily available, it'd be
yeah,
nice.
I didn't. Yeah, I don't have one readily available. So basically, did that was that all of your questions there for that for the team comps?
Um,
Mm,
yeah, I guess the main thing, because I know me and
mm.
our group were kind of arguing whether a hybrid comp is best or whether committing to a comp is best,
Yeah,
and
so most of the time you're gonna find that hybrid comps are very. I mean, like so it depends. It depends, right? That's the answer for almost anything in Overwatch. Does your group that you work with? Because you never really gave me a ton of like specifics on everybody.
yeah.
Do you have a lot of one tricks, like, or is everyone pretty flexible?
We all flex, but that doesn't mean we're good at
Yeah. So
flexing.
if you had a bunch of one tricks who are like who don't play really anything else but are really really good at their characters, then a hybrid comp might be the most effective comp because then they get to play their characters that they're really good at. But if they're able to flex around and that's kind of the play style that you want to go for, then you're probably not going to want to be on a hybrid comp like too much of the time because a hybrid composition usually isn't going to be very effective in their play styles because it doesn't really have a play style. It's just all over the place, right? It's just kind of a deathmatch style. So there's a
Yeah,
lot less team coordination that's involved and team play in general, and therefore because of that lack in team coordination and team play, you lose out on potential value you could be getting. All of the comps have a strength besides hybrid comp. Hybrid use doesn't really have a strength, right? In comparison to the other ones where we talked about Brawl has a strength of close range and fast. Spam has a strength of long and slow. Dive has a strength of instantly getting the high grounds and covering a lot of space very fast, right? And getting the backlines, right? So all those comps have their strengths and weaknesses. Hybrid comp doesn't really have a strength, right? So yeah, I'd say most of the time you're gonna want to, though there are situations and there have been metas where it's been a hybrid meta, right?
I
So
hear you.
all right, so then I think that really like settles with the big thing, but just keep in mind the things that we're talking about with that though, right? Is like spam plays slow and far, brawl plays close and fast. In that last in the last game that we were in, like we had to, and I think maybe even the one before that, but we had a ton. Basically, if we're comparing the two compositions, they had many more brawl characters than we did, right? On which meant that we have to play more passive than the enemy Reinhardt, right? He had like a Zarya, he had like more heals. We had like one single mercy healing us and a Roadhog or something like that. We had no Zarya, right? So when we're looking with like we're working with a comp like that, we have to play more passive because we can't afford to play aggressive. We have no backup from our team, right? We have no team support to play a brawler's playstyle. Therefore, we can't really play a brawler's playstyle as effectively. So in that situation, team comp dictates playstyle, and therefore we would have to play more passively in comparison to their Reinhardt, who has the team support, right?
Question.
Yep.
So, in terms of dive, spam, brawl,
Mhm.
does it work in a paper, scissors, rock kind of scenario where one comp beats another
Yeah.
one?
So decently, though they do like it's not perfect. Dive is a decently good counter to a spam comp, as a spam likes to play super far away, right? And if you're able to just get on top of them instantly with dive characters on top of their backline, and most of the time the spam comp is gonna have like pretty like have characters that are pretty weak to dive. So dive's a pretty decent counter to spam. Spam is a decently good counter to brawl, because if you're trying to play close, how are you going to play close if they're insanely far away from you, as long as you're playing it properly? So spam is decently good against brawl. Brawl is decently good against dive, because who are you going to dive if every character is super tanky and you're running close range characters? So if you dive in, you're getting shredded and melted, right? So that's kind of how it works, though spam and brawl also, I probably say, are decently even-ish. Um, if that like all the comps have like their ways to work against the other comp, right? Like you can run characters in a spam that can counter a dive, and you can run characters in you can run dive correctly to get work into a brawl, and you can run brawl correctly to work into a spam. You can run spam correctly to work into anything, right? So they all can work into each other, but that's kind of the rough rock paper scissors of how it works. Though it's not a very hard counter, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. Follow-up question.
Mm.
If they were, are you supposed to have that mentality? Let's say they run a brawl comp, and okay, well, let's run a spam comp to kind of counter it, or do most people match a brawl comp, and you're just trying to see who's the better
I would
brawler?
say it depends on a couple different things. Again, sorry with the depends answers, but it depends on map, right? If they're running a brawl comp, but you're playing on Junkertown or another map that's a spam map, then you might want to stick on spam, because spam's gonna have the advantage, right? If it depends again on what your players play. Like if you guys, for example, let's say all of you are really good at a brawl and you're terrible at a dive, well then don't run a dive comp if you're terrible at a dive, and run brawl more often, right? Or if you're really good at a dive but terrible at a brawl, then run dive more often, right? So you don't want to force yourself into a composition where you're bad on, and you don't want to force yourself into a composition that's bad on a certain map, like we discussed with the Junkertown. But if you feel but you can honestly, I don't think it's too big of a deal, to swap over. So let's say you're going for the rock paper scissors thing. It depends on the situation. Like if you feel like we need to swap because we're getting countered, then go for it. But if it's pretty even, then you might not want to swap, because then you'd just be giving up ultimates, and you'd all have to be dead and spawn, and all at the same time. So some people might not even be on the same, some people might not be in spawn, so that would make it more difficult for them to swap, right? So it really depends on the situation. I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to have the rock paper scissors mentality of they're on this, so let's swap to this. But I would more so say you might want to swap some characters. So for example, if you're on a spam comp and you're up against a dive composition, instead of swapping the entire spam comp, but you might just want to swap it to a counter dive comp, which is pretty much a spammy comp, except for you have counter dive characters such as McCree, who has a flashbang, and Brig, who has her bash, and Roadhog, who has his hook, right? Basically get a bunch of stun characters, and therefore you're running a pretty stunny comp that's still a spam comp, but it's a counter dive, right? So you, instead of swapping your entire comp around, you just swap a few different characters so that your comp works, right? So that's maybe the thing that would work a little bit better than just swapping your whole comp up to a brawl, right?
Yeah,
Because then you're not sacrificing every single ultimate, and you're still running characters that are decent on the map, right?
I hear you.
All right. So yeah, we used up a lot of time on the questions there, but if you have any, did you have any additional questions just to
No,
be clear?
no, I think I'm in a good spot to just kind of
Okay.
do a little more extended research and figure out comps and figure out which comps work best for which maps and just kind of be more aware. So when we do group up as a
Mhm.
team, at least I could calm that and be like, hey, Junkertown, let's not run a brawl comp, let's
Yep.
run a tag comp. So
Yep. Definitely recommend doing that. All right. So let's just we'll skip over the review part since we're pretty far into it here. We'll just go do over the main points and maybe I'll go a little bit into depth on them. But main points. Number one, well, let's see, probably say goes to aggression slash, awareness slash aggression. Make sure you're paying attention to your surroundings so you know when can I get aggro, when can I play passive, or like when should I play aggro, when should I play passive. This depends on a wide variety of things. It can depend on are we winning or losing the fight? That's a very big one, right? And then we talked about multiple other things that impacts that besides just 1 to 2, 2 to 3, right? We also talked about being having another advantage such as close spawns, being up people, or sorry, not being up people, being having more health, having more ults, being using more like having more abilities, right? Having closer spawns, so having better positioning, right? All those things impact it as well. Um, Team composition dictates your aggression because if we're on a spam comp and we're playing Reinhardt, and they're on a full brawl, we're gonna get rolled over if we're trying to play the same aggressiveness as the enemy Reinhardt, right? You can see they're kind of like how the hybrid doesn't work nearly as well as the brawl comp in that
yeah,
last game you're in, as
I
like
see,
the
I
brawl
see.
comp could kind of run you over, and what are you gonna do as Reinhardt, right?
Yeah,
So that's why like doing a brawl back into that might just work well for the map, and then also just work really well for to help your Reinhardt, right, and to support him if you're trying to run a Reinhardt. But in any case, right, we also talked about awareness. We talked about team compositions being a big thing that we want to work on. And then besides that, aggression, make sure we're pushing when we have shield and whatnot. We want to just go up a little bit, not too much, right? We're going from like 30% passiveness to like 50% aggression, right? We're not going all the way up to 100%. Now we can go up to like 100% if it's a 6v1, right? Go ahead and go up to 100% in that scenario, and you can go down to 0% if you've completely lost the fight and you're the only person left. But you don't want to be you want to average out around 50, right? Now moving on, number two is going to be survivability. We died a ton, right? 14 deaths in the one game we were in. Look to stay alive. 4 different things to go into that, right? Aggression goes into that, positioning goes into that, awareness goes into that, and your ability usage goes into that. I'd probably say in this order is the ones that affected it the most. Probably say your aggression and awareness affected it. Excuse me, and a burp there. I'd probably say aggression and position and awareness affected it the most. Then your shield management affected it second most, and then positioning as the last one there. And in your survivability and staying alive, right? Just make sure you're staying alive so you can actually do things. Number three is probably going to come in ult usage. We unfortunately didn't have enough time to go super into depth on that, but just keep in mind that you want to make sure you're landing more shatters and blocking more shatters, right? That one was number three, and we just want to make sure that we're tracking the enemy Reinhardt's ult, right, by going when was the last time he used it, right? If he used it last fight, he's not gonna have it this fight, and what has he been doing in comparison to me, right? If we're starting off the game, right, and you're tracking from the start of the game, if we're at 0 and we lose the fight, Reinhardt's probably gonna have more of an ult than we do, right? But if, for example, we killed him instantly and then lost the fight, well then now you're both at the pretty much the same, right?
right.
Because neither of you did anything. Um, so that's just make sure you're tracking it, but then also trying to hit yours a bit better. Try to look for more than just one person and try to go for like two. You can hit a shatter from, if he drops a shield to fire strike, if he drops a shield to charge, if he drops a shield for any reason, if it breaks, if he's you can shatter people who are not behind his shield. You can shatter people when he's dead, right? You have a ton of different options there, and there's even more complex ones that we unfortunately weren't able to go over. But just keep in mind you're looking to get shatter off better, right? Four, we're going to come in at ability usage. Um, just a bit, the main one particularly being your shield management, right? Shield hop, making sure we're shield hopping, make sure we're not blocking for everything conceivable under the sun, right? We're not just blocking for all spam damage, but we're blocking for specific things. When we're low, when our team is low, so paying very close attention to our team and our health bar, right? There were a lot of times where we died because we weren't paying attention to our health bar. That was another awareness thing we wanted to pay attention to, right? Paying attention. We can also block for abilities, for ultimates when we're pushing forwards and we're backing up. And then maybe I'd add in a third one or another one, which would just be like if you know that someone could die soon, right? So for example, if you see an insane amount of spam damage coming in, that might be a time to shield. If you see they have a snipers, then that's a time to shield. There's going to be those are the main the 6 ones that I talked about are the main core ones, but of course there are going to be ones that don't fall into those categories, right? There's going to be times where you need to shield, and it's not going to be one of those 6. You just have to be aware of them, right? Everything in Overwatch is always situational. I answered a lot of your questions like that because it's always going to be dependent on a ton of variables, and there's going to be times where you're going to have to shield. Like for example, up against snipers, they can one tap your team. You might have to shield a little bit more, right? And against snipers, they might not have as much spam damage as usual because, like, Widowmaker doesn't do too much against shields. Ashe doesn't do it too much against shields. So up against snipers, you might be able to hold up shield a little bit more often, right?
Yeah.
Now, finally, just positioning. We didn't go into too much into positioning. Just make sure you're with your team and we're paying attention to where our team's at. That was another big one. Is don't go in when you don't have your team with you. That was another good awareness one. Was just pay attention to where's my team positioned, where's the enemy team positioned. All right, those are all the
Question.
main points. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
When it comes to positioning, I know you said to look at the kill feed, but like, what are you conscious about? Like for me, when I'm looking at positioning, I'm usually main tank, so I'm usually at front. I'm
Mm-hmm.
usually leading the charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I guess what happens to me a lot is I'm leading the charge. I see an opportunity, I
Mm-hmm.
try to hit that opportunity, and then, I look back and like,
No
you
one's
know,
with you. Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yep. So, a
So
couple different things here, right? First off, you have this thing, right, where you can shield and look behind you at the exact same time, right? You have that as an option, right? That's a very, very good option to just make sure you're paying attention to your surroundings. But the other thing is making sure that you're not walking around constantly just looking straight forwards, but we're looking around us, right? So instead of just pressing W and doing a slow pan all the time, we're looking left, we're looking right, we're doing a 360 looking around us, especially right before we're pushing through. So let's say we're about to push around this corner, we're about to push that way, right? We're waiting on the corner, right? Real quick, we're about to push, and then we're like, oh wait a second, the boogie said to look around us, right? We look around, oh snap, half my team's in spawn, right? So we wait here a little bit, right? Okay, my whole team's with me, let's go, right? And we start going. If your entire team is right here and you push and they don't push with you, and you're on a brawl comp, you're not on like a spam comp where they need to sit back, then that's their fault, not your fault. You did the right thing, right? But
yeah,
if you're pushing in on your own and your entire team's all the way back there, right? Then that's your fault because you're not paying attention. So especially right before you push or right before you get into a fight or whatever, look behind you, right? We can do this and just do that real quick, right? Just do a quick flicker, right? Just look behind us so we can
wait.
tell if
How
they're with
do you
us.
do that? Because if you look behind you, don't you like
Turn around
what?
you.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, I get used to that text. So it's a little bit complicated until you get the hang of it. But if you so basically to do this, right, you hold down right click, you hold down left click, right. This allows you to do the free roam, right. It
What?
Yep. So you hold down right click, hold down left click. That's the free roam. If you're trying to turn in the direction in which you're facing, you let go of right click, right? This turns you in the direction where you're going. If you're trying to go back to your main direction, you let go of left click, right? That's just going to snap you back into place, right? So we let go of left click, right? Let go of left click, let go of left click, right? But instead, if we're trying to turn around, then we let go of right click, right?
Oh my god,
Hmm?
that's new to me. Holy shit.
Yep, that's going to give you a lot more awareness of your surroundings. All right. So, do you have any final questions on anything we talked about?
Nah, man. This is a good session. I appreciate your time, and
Yep.
I'm definitely gonna continue to, you know, work with you.
Sounds good, man. Just let me know if you have anything else. I'm going to end the recording there.